All right, welcome to Career Connections presentation of our first graduate student series. We're going to talk about CVs and resumes. What's the difference? Why do you need one or the other or the both? Career Connections, just a little bit about us and who we are. And by the way, feel free to pop anything in the chat at any time, or just, there's just a handful of us on here. You can unmute and jump in if you have questions, it's fine. But Career Connections, if you haven't visited us, and I understand a lot of graduate students think that we're not for them, but we totally are. All our services are for our undergraduate, graduate students, and alumni. So once you are a TW alum, you have access to our services for free for life. So that's a good thing. We've got a team of 11 full-time staff members. We help you get ready for the world of work, whatever that looks like in your world. All of our resources and everything is available at your fingertips at careerconnections.tw.edu. If you actually want to visit us physically and in person, we are in Woodcock Suite 200. Right now, we are only offering virtual appointments, either phone, video, or email, because our offices are really small and not a whole lot of room for distancing there. So let's see, getting ready. All right, so CVs versus a resume. So a curriculum vitae is Latin for course of life. Resume, and I wish I knew how to make some of the accent graves in Word, but I don't. And it's French for summary. And honestly, that kind of sums up the whole course of both of them. Both CVs and resumes, they're very tailored to what you're applying for. They need to represent you as the very best qualified candidate with your skills and qualifications. They're used to get your foot in the door, quite simply to get you that interview. And they usually don't include personal interests, rare occasion where those are relevant. If you're applying for both academic positions as well as industry, you will probably need both. It's probably a good idea to have both anyway. So how they are different. So a CV, as Course of Life recommends, it is a full, detailed history of your academic credentials. Everything is very detailed, whereas a resume is more of a snapshot and a summary of what you're looking for. So CVs, as I said, full history of academic credentials. It is used most specifically when applying for positions in higher education for faculty, for academic positions, grants, or research positions. The length, variable. They are not one page. They are usually 2 or more pages, depending on your experience. It includes a complete list of publications, presentations, conference presentations, full education, including your advisor and dissertation information. And it's typically more of in a bullet format, whereas a resume is really a snapshot, a very concise picture of your skills and qualifications for a certain position. It is typically shorter than a CV. Most people fit on 1 to 2 pages. Grad students, probably 2 pages by the time you put everything on there that's relevant, and that's fine. The 1-page deal, usually for our undergraduates coming out of undergrad with limited work experience, but even then, sometimes there's more than 1 page. And quite honestly, in the days of electronic applications, the page length doesn't matter as much, as long as you're using your space wisely and effectively, and you're not just putting filler in. Resumes are used when applying to pretty much everything but academics or non-research positions. Education is usually listed first on your resume, but only when that is your strongest selling point for the position. Often when you're at the graduate level, your experience is stronger than the education part. So order depends on, really depends, but it's not always first. And typically with a resume, it's bulleted content. You're going to have 3 to 5 bullets per entry, just to kind of give that snapshot and summary of your strongest qualifications. What they have in common is they both need to be very consistent, clean, and organized, and look very professional. There's lots of ways to do that. Any questions so far? All right. Let's move forward. Thank you. Okay, so who reads these things, right? We put blood, sweat, and tears into them. Why? Who even looks at them? Well, your hiring managers look at them, recruiters look at them, and the ever so popular search committee in academia. And they get the big old stack of them. What you probably don't know is that when you're applying to most organizations, that they are using applicant tracking systems to scan and upload your resume. Then the applicant tracking systems essentially is kind of an HR function of weeding out people who don't match the basic qualifications. So it's very important that you tailor your CV and or your resume specifically to that job position, because they're using that job position, the skills and qualifications that they have outlined as their criteria. So you want to make sure you're using the same language and the same skills, and you're kind of in the same speak as what the position you're applying for. Those go into those buzzwords and keywords. Tailor every resume. Long gone are the days where you just do one resume or CV and make photocopies of it and send it out. The beauty of computers is that you can tailor everything to it, and that's great. Also a little bit more time consuming, which is fine. I recommend having a base CV or resume that you can pull from when you're tailoring each one. So you'll end up having, a file for every resume or every CV that you have submitted. And again, if you're looking for specific programs, postdoc program, or moving from master's to doctoral programs, the admission committee will take a look at those as well. There's some basic guidelines for each of them. Need to be clean, concise, more so with the resume, but even on the CV, you don't want to use a lot of extra words. You need to think of both the CV and the resume as being valued real estate, and you want to make sure that you're very intentional with every word that you use. You want to make sure that your phrasing is impactful and is concise. So that goes into using strong action verbs and making sure that you just aren't rambling. And that's why it's important to have somebody else look over it, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. You want to make sure it's a professional look. Now, there are a bazillion different templates out there, and that's a great place to kind of get an idea of what you might want your resume to look like or your CV, but quite honestly, they're very basic in format. Because you want to make sure, sorry, that pops up there. They're very basic format, makes it easier for the applicant tracking systems to read. And it also makes it easier for the hiring manager or the search committee to read. And they're looking for specific things. So you want to make it, easy for the eye to follow and clean, professional look. Now, if you are in a graphic arts area or some other creative field, you can get a little bit more creative with your resume. But again, that depends on the field, and you want to make sure that the design does not take away from your resume or the impact that you're having or the CV. You want to make sure it enhances it in some way. That being said, a lot of the templates that are out there cannot be read by those applicant tracking systems with the coding. So you really just kind of want to start with a fresh Word document. And if you find a design, maybe like a horizontal line under your name or whatever, you can add that in. But templates usually are restricting in what you can put in certain text boxes, and very rarely are they the best way to maximize how you're presenting yourself. You want to make sure that information is easy to read. Again, those clear headings that we'll talk about. The most common format is the reverse chronological order, meaning that the most recent is first and going backwards. Now, there are several different types of resumes and CVs depending on the order of things and how you want to maximize your skills and presentations. It just depends on Maybe you've had a gap and you've come back to school, or you've had a work break, or you're changing career fields. Then there might be a hybrid resume format or CV format. And I'm using them interchangeably right now because this applies to both. But for the most part, reverse chronological is going to be the most effective. I encourage you to talk with your career consultant about what the most effective format will be for your particular situation. You always want to, it's kind of like a lead in journalism, lead with the most relevant information first. That's why your name's up top, right? That's what you want them to remember, and their contact information. But you always want the most important information first, because that's where your eye goes. The recruiters and the hiring managers, they're going to stop reading after a little bit, unless you've just hooked them in really strong. So you want to put the most pertinent information first. For a resume, you're going to want skill-oriented bullet points, and we'll talk more about that in a minute and how to do that. And by all means, you cannot have any errors or typos on it. The last thing you want to say is that you have a strong attention to detail, and then there's like 3 typos in your resume or your CV. You want to make sure your tenses are all correct, your spelling and your grammar is correct. That's why you always have somebody else look over it, because you know as well as anybody when you're writing, you know what you're trying to say, and it comes out in your head and you think that's what you've put, but until somebody else looks at it and understands what you're trying to convey, you're not sure. And we know not to rely on spell check, right? That's just not a reliable way to, to have it checked. All right, so content, basic content. First thing, there's really only 3 things you absolutely have to have on your resume. Your contact information or your header. After all, that's the most important thing you want them to remember. Your education, and then your experience, whatever that experience may be. Experience does not have to be paid work experience. Experience can be anything. It can be volunteer, it can be academic experience. All of that can be filtered under your experience. Those are your required sections. Beyond that, there are certain things that you could have that would enhance your resume or your CV. Now, these are optional sections for resume or CV, and we're going to talk here in a second about the ones that are specifically for CVs. So Lola had a question, which is more important, listing award scholarship first or work experience? It depends on the situation. It depends on what's most relevant for your what you're applying for. So typically, I'm going to say that work experience, but you do want to have awards on there, but it depends. So if you're going to have an award section, it might be, depending on if you're applying for a faculty position, those awards might be more important. So it's sometimes they're more, that's why it's all flexible. It's a kind of a non-answer, I'm sorry, but it really just depends on the situation. An optional section is your summary. You see that a lot now. Some of you might be familiar with what used to be the objective on your resume, seeking a position as faculty in a biology department. Okay, those are obsolete. Those are when you needed to mail your resume to somebody and tell them what you're applying for. That's not how this works anymore. So the objective has morphed into a summary, which we'll talk more about in a minute, but it really is that hook, that what makes you unique and why they should hire you for the position. What are that unique combination of skills and qualifications that you have in 3 to 5 sentences. That's the hardest part of your resume or CV to write, so I recommend doing it last. Coursework, that's going to depend on, again, your course of study and what you're applying for. If you're, say, getting your doctorate in marriage and family therapy, you don't need to say, counseling foundations 101. That's implied, right? You want things that they're not going to know that you've had inherent on the degree that you're getting. Professional training. Again, if you've had some outside certifications or training, that's a great thing to do. Honors and awards, as we've talked about, particularly if they're scholarships, you can include that. Any activities, I also like to call that either campus involvement or community involvement. Memberships, if you're involved in any student organizations or professional associations, those will qualify for those as well. Now for a CV specifically, you might want to have, if you have received any grants, any teaching or mentorship positions, assistantships, fellowships, presentations, seminars, conferences, presentations, any publications, any research experience, and that all very important institutional service or campus involvement, if you'd like. So the CV, again, is going to be much more detailed and have all of that information on there. Not necessarily each of these sections, but likely more than just your basic resume sections. Any questions on content headings sessions? All right, we got a chat going up here. Don't have much work experience. Is it better to, yeah, you're going to order it. If you don't have much work experience, you can order it into what's going to be most impactful in imparting your skills and abilities. So if you've got research experience or presentations or publications, definitely you can put those before the work experience if the work experience is not particularly detailed for you at this point. And that's fine. You know, some people are full in the academics and are not working, or that work experience is not in your mind completely relevant to what you're applying for, but more often than not, you've got those transferable skills that are included in that and can be related to whatever you're applying for. So we can talk about how to market that. All right, so I mentioned that contact information. This is a couple of the formats that it can look like. You might want to include your city and state just to let you know, especially if you're applying for local positions. We're not including the physical address anymore because they're really not going to mail you anything. And 9 times out of 10, when you're applying for something, not only are you submitting a CV or a resume, you're also filling out an online application that's got all that stuff in it anyway. So you don't need to be redundant. And it's just a thing for safety and also saving space. You could also include, if you have a LinkedIn profile link there, or an online portfolio link, you can put there as well. And that again is industry specific. Sometimes in arts, let's see, I already said that. Yeah, particularly the art and communication, that portfolio piece is going to be more important. All right, that summary piece. So a summary, as I said, is the most challenging part to write, which I prefer to do it last once you've gotten a better idea of what your skills and abilities are going to look like. So you want to highlight that your skills and qualifications, in addition to those maybe soft skills or transferable skills, that personality that gives you an idea of who you are as a future employee. This is not the time to put that you enjoy horseback riding. It might be the time to put if you're multilingual, and if so, in what languages. So this is one for a research scientist, talks about the years of experience. I'd say if you've got more than 5 years, you can include years of experience on there in their field of study, exceptional expertise in molecular, biology. I can't speak today. And a bunch of words that I don't do because I am not in biology. Highly organized, collaborative, focusing on those soft skills, team scientist with project management skills to keep projects on time and on budget to completion. Translating complex scientific concepts, work well independently as well as part of a team, excellent communication skills, deadline oriented, not detail oriented. So that's an example of one. You can also Google some different ideas of, you know, what to include in the summary, but essentially it's 3 to 5 sentences of what makes you unique and the best qualified for the position. You're going to use those position descriptions of what you're applying for to really tailor it there. So if they're looking for somebody who can work independently or as part of a team, you're going to include that. Or somebody who is, you know, wanting to teach molecular biology. Well, oh, look, expertise in molecular biology. So you're going to tailor your summary to that position description to exemplify how you're the best candidate for that position. All right, education. please make sure that you spell out Texas Women's University and that it's Texas Women's University and not Texas Women's University. I cannot even tell you how many times I have seen that. Make sure you know the full name of the degree that you're getting. Often people don't know that. And we may say, I'm getting my master's, but it really is a singular master, a master of science, not a master's. What we say and what it actually is are two different things. You can list your dissertation, title, and advisor. Please put city and state because not everybody knows where we're located. You don't have to say anticipated graduation May of 2023, kind of implied by the date put there. If it's been a while since you've gotten your bachelor degree, you don't necessarily have to include the date on that. They're going to ask for your transcripts anyway. So that's often a question I get people, particularly if they've returned to their graduate studies after an absence or a hiatus from school. Are there any questions on education at this point?
So,
yeah.
So if you are putting the date for when you will achieve your Master of Arts in whatever, but it's been a gap since you got your undergrad, can you put the date for one and leave the date off of the other, or?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do that. I know we don't often like to, give a signal to what our age may be. But again, they're going to probably get your transcript at some point, but you necessarily don't need to advertise it. If it's in the last 10 years or so, absolutely go ahead and put it in there. Mine's been a little bit longer than that, so might want to do that. So Rachel asked, are dual degrees listed together? Yes, you can list them together. Or list them like if you got Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Philosophy in Human Development. If you're doing a dual degree, you can put it together. I always consult the catalog for those. It makes it a little bit easier because, again, and for the longest time, they've changed it now, but we didn't have, it was a Bachelor of Science with a major in nursing, not a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, which it's semantics, but there was a little a reason behind that. So you have to kind of, take that as it goes. So all colleges attended. Yes, Lola, if you achieved a degree or if there's going to be on your transcript. But if you completed, like if you got an associate degree from Colin and then, transferred here, then yeah, definitely do that. If you just took a few courses here or there, you don't necessarily need to include that. All right. Moving on.
I have one more question.
Oh, yes,
what about the certificate programs?
You can list that under education. You could put it as a subheading or a different heading altogether. It's up to you.
Thanks.
So I pick on poor Starbucks here as my sample, but there are other samples. But the main thing here is that you want to list things consistently and either leading with the title and then the company name and the city and state and the dates, or like down here, if working for Starbucks is more impressive than barista, you can list it that way. And there are several different ways to do it. As long as you're consistent and how you format it, it doesn't really matter unless important information. So trying to think of a good example on this. My barista example is not a good example, but teaching assistant may be more impactful than Alpha Best, after school care. So you want, is that title more impactful or the organization that you work for? So just in the order of how you do it. But again, not overly important. That's a little minor detail. If you are still doing the job, use the present tense. If you are not doing this job, use the past tense. We're going to talk a little bit more about skill-oriented statements. For the most part, you're going to have 3 to 5 bullet points. depending on the position. And those are going to be the most important skills or accomplishments that you had for the position. And this does not need to be a job description. We don't need to know if you've worked at Starbucks that you collected customers' orders and prepared orders and, cleaned up at closing. What we want to know are those customer skills that you were able to multitask in a fast-paced environment, work within a team. So we want to focus on those bigger picture skills if it's a position that's not highly relevant to what you're applying for. Now, then this is where that position description comes in. When you're applying for a position, look and see what are the skills that they're looking for. What are those tasks and qualifications, and make sure you're using those same keywords in your position descriptions as you're seeing in those. And it may be, it's like, well, yeah, I've got that. I just didn't say it like that. So you want to kind of make sure you're doing that. So if you're applying for a faculty position and they want to know, did you meet with students one-on-one? What courses did you teach? And I've got a sample experience. In fact, my next slide is a sample on that for CV. So teaching assistant. If you were, Department of Biology, you prepared and implemented lectures, course syllabi, examinations, online courses and websites and evaluations. Again, 50 undergraduates. It's always important to quantify where you can. So whether you did a class of 50 or a class of 200, that's an important distinction of how you manage that in time management. If you're teaching and that's an assistantship you want to list the courses that you taught and when you taught them. Any questions on the experience part? A lot of this you'll be kind of tweak with your career consultant because it's very personal. I say don't make it like a job description, but if that's how you need to start, of just kind of doing a brain dump of what did I do, then you can go back to it and make it. One of the biggest trip ups that I find is people wanting to make it sound all pretty and fancy when they first start out. Just like any paper that you write, get your ideas on the paper and then go back and revise and revise and revise. It's really no different than any other paper you're writing in that aspect. It's easier to edit than try to make it sound nice to start out with. Volunteer experience, community involvement. One way to do that, again, is listing it, list when you did it, city and state, format it like you do an employer. If you want to, like Big Buddies Reading as an employer, I don't know what that is, and tutored 10 grade children or 10, is that 10th grade or 10 children? I don't know. That was typo on my part. Quantify. Let me know what you did to contribute or what that volunteer was. If it was, Habitat for Humanity, I pretty much know Habitat for Humanity. Most people do and understand. Or if you, weren't out there on a build, what did you do? A little blurb on that. I like this food distribution, especially if you were involved in training volunteers, prepared food. Again, that quantifying where important. Fundraising is a huge one, especially, if you want to talk about how much you raised. So anytime with volunteer experience, that's an important one to include in there. Organizations, and these can be community organizations. These can be campus organizations. So that just depends. Doesn't have to be one or the other. Again, list it like you would an employer, president, student organization of communication sciences, when, where, and again, use that appropriate tense, skill-oriented statements, 3 to 4 bullets, no periods. I'm not a big fan of periods on a resume. You can use them as long as you're consistent. But it's just an either you do it or you don't, and make sure you're consistent with doing that. I think it's easier to not use it because they're not real sentences, and it bothers my inner grammar nerd to do that. ASA. Awesome. Yes, ASA. Student organization. You can, if you're just a member, you can put that down, and that's all the information you need. You don't need to elaborate on that any further. So you're making me laugh, Brittany. All right. Honors awards, scholarships, certifications. Again, certifications, depending how relevant they are to what you're applying for. I know you like CPR certification is important to put on, especially if you're health sciences, OTPT, that kind of thing. Scholarship name, the amount of money that was awarded, especially if it's a significant amount, if there was an award name. Again, consistency is the key here. There's really no common format that you have to do, but the scholarship, city and state, or the institution that was awarded to you, especially if you've attended more than one institution, go ahead and include that there. All right, skills section. You'll see skills they commonly put on a resume. Again, it depends. You're gonna see this more on a resume than a CV. And again, it's going to depend, and I know y'all are tired of me saying that, but it depends on what you're applying for and whether that it's inherent in the rest of your resume. So if this is not, if the skills are not evidenced in other parts of your resume, you may want to highlight them in a skills section, or particularly like planning and delegating, or leadership skills, or critical thinking skills. You want to make sure that it ties to that position description. Again, this is going to be malleable depending on what you're applying for. You don't see this as much on a CV as you do on a resume. So any question on the skills section on that? Okie doke. The skill-oriented statement. So you've heard me talk about these skill-oriented statements. What does that mean? So what it means is you don't want to just list the duties that you did. You want to quantify it and give some action and result, really not unlike when you're talking about in an interview, when you're talking about, giving examples, behavior-based. What action did you take? How did you do it? And what was the result? And anytime that you can quantify or give evidence of a skill or an accomplishment, that's what you want to do. So an example would be executed excellent customer service by calling customers to follow up after their services to increase the survey response for monthly reports. Okay, so that's a lot better than executed excellent customer service, right? It gives you a bigger picture of what was done and how it was accomplished and why. And then bonus points if you can say what the increase in that monthly report was, the increased survey response by 15%. Another one, and I see this a lot, particularly with our childcare or babysitting. Yes, include babysitting on there, particularly if you were regular for a family or multiple families. Action, supervised 5 children, not just supervised children, but 5. That already gives me a picture of that you've got your hands full. And assess for safety concerns, maintain organization, facilitate conflict resolution throughout the day. Now you can envision that, but that does tell a story, doesn't it? And it gives a bigger picture of the idea of the skills involved with that. All right. Before I jump onto the do's and don'ts, what questions do you have on content? All right. Some do's and don'ts. So I highly, highly recommend you meeting with your career consultant, because they can work with you specifically on your CV or resume or both, and make sure that it's maximizing your skills and qualifications for the positions you're seeking. For a resume, you keep it to 1 to 2 pages. CV, again, CV, please don't make it 10 pages unless you've been in your field for 20 plus years. And even then, that's excessive. And I'm not even going to try to quantify the number of pages. Just make sure that you're using your space wisely and that you have solid content and not fillers. Double check for typos and errors. Use action verbs. We have a list of action verbs, and I'm going to show you our website here in a little bit. Whole list of action verbs when you're trying to find that word of, well, what did I do? But particularly collaborate, facilitate, manage, create, implement, make sure and we as women are not socialized to speak strongly about ourselves. I see a lot of assisted with or responsible for, and those are not strong words. You can talk about yourself in strong language and assert your skills. It takes practice. It really is, because we're just not comfortable talking about ourselves in that light. But use those strong action verbs and take responsibility for it. Take responsibility for what you are doing and creating. Quantify wherever possible when you're talking about number of students or research or anything like that. Quantify where you can and try to focus on those skill-oriented statements. Don't use first person. Okay, so I call this resume speak. I get a lot of questions about what is the best way, what tense are resumes in. So they are in first person, but you never use I. So what you want to start is maybe start the sentence like you would use I collaborated with, but don't put I. Collaborated with campus partners to implement dance for residents. Making that up, but use first person, but not the subject. I see a lot of people trying to do it in third person, like coordinates, but that's not right. It's I coordinate. And then past tense for anything that you are not currently doing. Don't lie or embellish or exaggerate on your resume. They will find it out, and it's just not a good impression. And if you have trouble feeling like you don't have anything to put on your resume or your CV, come see your consultant, because you do. You just maybe not thinking about it in broad terms. Don't rely on spell check. We just see a lot of bad examples of spell check, especially with tenses and agreeing. Avoided making it sound like a job description. Again, you can start out that way, but let's tweak it, massage it, and make it sound more like some accomplishments. And again, don't use those templates. Not a good thing in general. We've got some samples. There are samples all over the place. You can make it look nice and streamlined without resorting to a template. Final notes, and we get lots of these questions. And again, this goes for a CV or a resume. Make sure you use a clean font. Typically Arial, Cambria, Calibri, something that's a sans serif font. Avoid Times New Roman. I don't think anybody touches Courier anymore, but occasionally I see it. Just make sure it's a current font and easy to read. Make it 11 or 12 point font. Don't go to 10 point, please. And that's just hard on our old eyes, and it does make it hard to read. And again, we're not trying to cram this on one page anymore, so don't feel like you have to make teeny tiny font to fit on one page. Make sure your section headings are bigger and they stand out so that they draw to the eye to the different sections that you want it to. In the US, CVs and resumes are different documents, but overseas it can be used interchangeably. So it can be, in the US, a CV is a detailed document, the resume is short. If you are coming from another country, a CV might be interchangeable with a resume, and they're not interchangeable here. If there's any doubt of what the person is asking for when you're applying, whether it's a CV or a resume, just ask and clarify. Numeric numbers and spelling, yes, you can use numeric numbers instead of spelling out. And even if it's under 10, absolutely. Your traditional grammar rules don't necessarily apply to things like that. So yes, you can use especially that high impact space. Thank you for that question, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Follow directions in the application as to file format. The most popular ones are docs and PDFs. Rarely will they ask for a text document or a plain text document. PDFs, then your formatting is not going to get all wonky, but sometimes those applicant tracking systems have a hard time picking information out from PDFs. So just make sure, that you're following directions in the online application to what file format they prefer. And I think I've stressed this, but maybe we can stress this again. target those documents to whatever you're applying for and use that position announcement and description as a guide. I know that when we put our position descriptions out there, we talk about exactly what the person's going to do. It's counseling, advising, and presenting, programming. I expect to see that on the resume for people who are applying for those positions and those skills. So if I have to work hard to figure out if you match those skills resume, I've already moved on to somebody else. So make sure that you are following that position description as a guide for, they're saying, this is what I'm looking for. And you want to make it as clear as possible of, I have these skills and abilities that you're seeking. All right, if you have not visited our website, and I'm going to jump out of this presentation in a minute and give you a quick little tour around because I'm very proud of it, but we do have this Learn How To guide over here, and under resume and cover letter prep, we also have the CV Quick Start Guide. It will walk you through how to get started, what sections to include, and how to format it. Anything that you want as far as preparation, from figuring out what you need to do next to different application processes to preparing for the interview, we've got it ready for you on our website so that you can get to it when you need it. I want to talk about a few things we've got coming up right now this week. If you need some professional wear that's not yoga pants that you've been wearing for the past year, which I'm having a hard time getting out of myself, we are participating in JCPenney's Suit Up, and they do have scrubs if that's your preferred work attire, but they also have pretty much anything that from business casual to full on. It includes shoes and accessories. Did I mention it includes shoes? You can text Pioneer to the number and get a coupon code and the website link. Our next graduate student series is going to be Academia versus Corporate America, pros and cons, and how to apply for those. Tomorrow we have our Connect Career Business Careers, if I have any MBAs on the call. And we've got everything coming up. Just check our website. And again, I'm going to show you that in just a second on how to navigate our website and see what we've got coming up in the world. What questions do we have here before I do a quick little tour of the website and what we have available? Any questions on, I hope I've been able to give you all a clear picture of the differences between resumes and CVs and when to use one or the other. Very similar in a lot of ways, yet very different. High school diploma, not at this point in your career. No, once you've graduated, especially once you're a year or two into a bachelor or associate's degree, drop off the high school, even on CV. The recording will be on our YouTube page after we get it captioned, which does take a little bit. We do have our students do captioning, and we will upload it to our YouTube page and put that available. So you can always click to our link. And how do you find our YouTube page? Well, I will show you again with the share the screen. There we go. All right. So our website, if you've come down to our website here, we've got the workforce recruitment program going on now. So here are Learn How To events. This has all our upcoming events and what you need to be doing. So we've got a lot, just like everywhere else. October is a busy month and we've got a lot of things coming up. Our employer spotlight and behind the scenes. First, Times New Roman on the resume. You can still use Times New Roman. It's not my favorite, but it's not bad. I like to play around. I'm kind of a fontaholic. I like to play around with different fonts, but anything but Courier. No, but yeah, you can still use Times New Roman on the resume or CV. It'll work. So those are our events. My very favorite is the Learn How To, particularly when it comes to, let's see, what do you want to see? Job search. I'll show you some job search stuff here. We got things going on. So our featured resources, obviously it takes you to Handshake, which has all our information on it. Candid Careers is our newest integration, and this has over 6,000 videos on different careers in different industries across the board. They've got videos on getting hired, on interview skills, on resume, CV, you name it, we've got there. So it's a really great resource to look at. Career Shift. Now, this is one of our newer ones as well, and this is a really great resource if you're looking to make connections. It's actually got two parts to it. One is a really great organizer for your job search and helps you kind of where you've applied and what documents submitted and how to keep track of all of that. But it's also a big old database of organizations across the country. And it's not based on LinkedIn, where that has to be updated by the people who are maintaining their pages. This scours organization websites with contact information. So if you're looking for TW alumni who are doing, who got a degree in biology, you can look it up. Great way. Yeah, Stephanie, go ahead. You can unmute, ask your question.
It's been a while since I've attended some professional conferences. When it comes to a resume, is that still the norm? Do you take a resume with you just in case if you meet with someone, you have something to provide, or do you just provide a business card, or what information do you take with you to provide when you go to professional conference?
I would have a business card with my LinkedIn profile. And your LinkedIn profile, which is a whole nother workshop. It's going to be it's kind of like your online resume or online CV. It's going to have that updated and all that information, because you want to target those resumes or CVs to different positions. You don't really want to have just a blank one to hand out. I would get their contact information or their email and send it to them after the fact. Most people are not carrying that with them around. Now, granted, it's been a hot minute since I've been to a conference too, but I have not seen anybody taking any resumes with you. Most of it's done electronically.
So if you have your LinkedIn set up, do you keep it kind of still generic, because you can't really tailor it to something
Right.
specific?
Well, I mean, your LinkedIn is going to be more of that overall look, and it's going to have, your areas of interest. You can, target your summary. You can click if you're open to looking, and if you're looking in a specific area. I mean, it is a little more generic, and it's not specifically targeted to a specific announcement, as you will when you will be, applying for a certain position. Now, that being said, if you're going to a conference that has an interview portion to it, now some still do that and some don't, then you might consider having a resume with you. But I'd also have my laptop and change it based on what I'm doing with that. I hope that clarifies. Your faculty might be able to give you a better answer on that, on the whole conference situation.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I have another question.
Yes, I have a question. So one time I had an interview, and the job description requires a specific skill, like software application. So I learned about that application in theory, like in one of the courses, but I never really practiced it. So I told them that, but then, I didn't get any news back from them. So if that happens again, should we mention that in our CV or resumes, or should not, or how do we specify that?
You want to, be honest about your level of proficiency with it. If they mention it in the job description and you are familiar enough with it that you would be able to interact with that application, then include it. Now, here's a little side note. So men look at a job description, and if they match about 50% of the qualifications, they'll go ahead and apply. Women, we look at it and tend to go, oh, I only match about 50%, so I'm not going to apply, or 80%, so I'm not going to apply. So, you know what, go ahead and submit, even if you don't have every single qualification on there. Let's make that decision, because what they're outlining is what their ideal candidate looks like, and not necessarily what they're going to get. And particularly with computer programs and applications, we can learn those pretty quickly.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Chris, on LinkedIn, I'm trying to think of, yeah, we have one on social media coming up. Let's see, when is that one? That one is standing out in social media, October 26th. So yeah, that's going to involve LinkedIn as well. So let's see, Career Shift is another one. I want to point out to y'all one of my very favorite resources that we have. And I'm going to put here for interview prep, because let's just get real. Interviews are scary, no matter when you're doing them or how much experience you have in the field or what. Big Interview. This is our online tool, and whether you are, doctoral level, master's level, whatever, whether you're going into industry or academia, they have tailored questions for those career fields and industry to match your experience level and the industry you're going in. So they have these, people asking you these questions. You can record yourself answering them. You can look back at your recording and go, I nailed it, or I need to work on that answer. And it helps you really get an idea of where you stand, how comfortable you are answering those questions. And it helps you kind of navigate, how to answer those questions. It has playbooks, it's got videos on how to answer all those tell me about yourself questions. And we also have a workshop coming up on interviews, mastering the art. When is that one? Standing out in social media. Well, look, I have that one. I guess AC interview, October 12th. So we've got that coming up, but Big Interview is a great way to practice your interview skills. And if you want feedback, you can send the videos to me or your career consultant or your faculty or a trusted friend in the area and help them give you some feedback on how to answer those questions. That's one of my very favorite tools that we have. But we've got tips for your 30-second speech. We have under resume and cover letter prep, that's where our CV information is as well. I love LinkedIn Learning. We've got our CV quick start guide, our resume quick start guide. We have, what was that, cover letter basics. If you need to write a cover letter, this walks you through how to do that as well. How to do that transferable skills worksheet. How do you add marketable skills to your resume? A lot of this, that the meat of your resume and CV, how to put it all together is there. That list of action verbs I was telling you about, and how to write a summary. Purdue OWL, I'm sure y'all are familiar with, great resource on Writing Lab if you have any questions. So we have this broken down and interacted. When you get ready to go to, negotiate a salary, we've got salary negotiation workshops, you name it. But the best thing is, if you need to make an appointment with your career consultant, you can come here and look. And those of you who are in the College of Arts and Sciences are very familiar with Elizabeth McDonald. Schedule an appointment. It takes you to handshake and see her availability. So we've got Chrissy Meek, who is our College of Professional Education, Mallory Metz, who is on this call for our College of Health Sciences. We're in the process of hiring for our College of Business. We've got Olivia in Houston, Trevor in Dallas. So everybody's got a consultant, and we're all well-versed on how to help you navigate your job search and put together your documents. So, all right, I've thrown a lot of information at you at this point in time. What other questions can I answer for you today? Where do we put the information on Explain the Gap? How detailed will she be? Yes, Lula. I took a 14-year break. And actually we had a great call this morning with an employer who works specifically with women who are re-entering the workforce, reach higher, and they offer returnships. You can put, career break and put the dates and just address it head on if you want. I think employers are much more open and understanding of breaks and gaps in employment now than they used to be. So I wouldn't necessarily, you can put it on your resume, but you don't necessarily have to. If they notice the gap, and you can just say, I took time off to raise my children and then I've returned to the career field. So you can do it that way as well. I've seen some people put, CEO of their home and list everything and the skills that they did there. There's some really awesome examples of including that on your resume. I think it depends on your career field and whether you can do that or not, but you just have to, you don't need to explain it. It's just a fact of life. And particularly as women, we care for our children, we care for our parents. And, we step away and step back. And I think that people are much more understanding about that now. And there's certainly ways that you can address that with the question. If they ask it, most people are not going to ask that anymore. Anything else? Yeah. Spell out professional. Yes. Yes. Please don't use, I should have put that on there. No acronyms, American Library Association. Yeah, because we don't know what those applicant tracking systems are scanning for. And you can have acronyms that mean different things in different career fields. So always spell out any abbreviations or acronyms. Don't put TWU, put Texas Women's University. So yes, that's a great question, Rachel. Thank you. Awesome.